Hey there everybody, welcome to Also Bears, and this is the Hyundai i30 Fastback N. In 2018, Hyundai shocked the automotive world by bringing out the i30 N hatchback, and it was a true class contender in a very competitive hot hatch segment, taking the fight to the likes of the Renault Megane RS, Golf and 308 GTI. But for 2019 they decided to up the ante and bring out the Fastback N. And I've had this Fastback N for a week, and I'm going to let you know if you should still consider it over the likes of the Golf GTI. When it comes to styling, I think we can all agree that the Fastback N is just a really good looking car. I think the designers have hit the nail on the head when they were designing this one. And I'll even go as far as to say I think it's better looking than the i30 N hatchback, particularly at the rear of the car, because I think the hatchback is just a little bit more fussy and unfinished, whereas this looks really sexy with the ducktail spoiler and dual exhaust pipes. But let me know what you think. Click up in the top right hand corner and choose between the i30 N hatchback and the i30 Fastback N, and let me know what you think is better looking. But I think as well they got the proportions all right. I mean, you can clearly tell there's going to be a bigger boot here on the Fastback N, and you know, yes, you're going to have a sacrifice in rear headroom for those passengers sat in the back. But all in all, I think, you know what, there is a little bit of form over function, but I think they've carried it out really well, Hyundai. And I think that's enough of looking at the front of the i30 Fastback N, although I could do this all day, looking at those gorgeous 19-inch alloys, the red brake calipers and all the extra hot hatch styling. But let's go have a little look at the inside. Sat in the front of the Fastback N, you are greeted by a very pleasant and comfortable interior, but not really that exciting. However, when you're sat in these very sporty seats, you do find that that goes away very quickly, and they even hold a big bear like me in place. But do note that if you are slightly wider than myself in the hip area, you will find that the supports on the side of the base of the seat might just be tucking in and rubbing on the undersides of your thighs, so just be aware of that. Now, I'm 5'7" tall and 5'7" wide, and I haven't exactly got a Recaro arse, but I do fit very comfortably and very snugly in these seats, so I've got no complaints about that whatsoever. Now, both the front seats are also electrically adjustable, and they are heated, and that is standard. And also, if you're doing any longer journeys, you can extend the base of the seat as well to give you a bit of additional underleg support. Again, that is also standard. And also with that, you've got the steering, which has both brake and reach adjustment, so you can get the perfect driving position, which is really handy in this type of car. And then you come on to the design of the dashboard layout, and it is very similar to that of the revised Tucson, but also the Ford Focus as well. And if you want to watch my review of either of those cars, click up in the top right hand corner or wait for the link at the end of the video. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing because it's very logically laid out, and I do like the fact that the infotainment screen is set high up on the dashboard. And then when it comes to interior quality, it's actually pretty good as well. We've got soft touch plastics on the dash and on top of the doors here and on the sides of the doors. And then the rest of the plastics are hard, but they do feel durable and should stand the test of time. And then we got the steering wheel itself, which is of course bespoke for the N and the N line, and it just feels really lovely in your hand. You actually feel like you've got a nice sporty driving position, and I really like it. So yeah, I've got the little N badge on the bottom there and also on the gear lever as well. Cubby spaces are also really good as well. We've got some very decent sized door bins with allocated slots for bottles, but just be aware that they're not lined with any fabric, so any loose items you chuck in there is going to rattle around all over the place. There is a little spot just in front of the gear lever, but it's more for wireless charging, and again that is standard on the N. Now, we have got a couple of cup holders next to the handbrake, and then underneath the armrest we have got some additional space in there as well. I'm just a little bit gutted that the armrest itself doesn't slide forward for additional comfort when you're doing a longer journey. And then we have got the glove box, which is of a decent size, but the actual book pack is quite substantial on the Fastback N, so just be aware of that. It does take up quite a bit of space. But all in all, I just feel that the interior is lacking a bit of kind of sportiness in terms of what you can see in front of you. Now yes, we have got some bespoke N dials and they do look really nice, particularly when driving at night, and we have got some little red surrounds on the outer air vents, but I would have liked to have seen them here on the centre air vents, and also where we got a little bit of metal effect around the climate control buttons. But that's only me being quite pedantic. All in all, it's actually a really nice and comfortable place to be, and the fact that there's not too many kind of colours distracting you is actually quite a good thing, particularly if you want to take your Fastback N to the track. But all in all, yeah, I really do like the layout of the i30 Fastback N. It's very nice, very comfortable and very pleasant to be in, if not the most exciting though. Now that's enough of the front of the Fastback N. Let's have a seat in the back. Sat in the back of the Fastback N, it's exactly how you'd expect it to be, given that sloping roofline. So that driver's seat is set to my driving position. I'm 5'7" tall and 5'7" wide, and as you can see, I've got an okay amount of knee room, and headroom is, well, if I sit up straight, my head is touching the ceiling. So anyone over 5'9", 5'10" is going to start struggling when it comes to space and being comfortable back here. But it is perfect for kids. What I do like as well is that the windows are of a decent size and they do open all the way down. And on the tops of the doors we have got soft touch plastic there as well. So that's actually quite surprising for a car in this class. Cubby spaces are pretty good as well. We've got some decent sized door bins, again with an allocation for putting a bottle in. And then we've got some airplane style pockets on the backs of the seats. We have also got a centre armrest that comes down, and we've got a couple of additional cup holders, but there is no through loading into the boot. And when it comes to installing a child seat, it's really nice and easy because there are these little hinges for the covers of the Isofix supports, so you're not going to lose them like you would do in a Volkswagen Group car. And that's pretty much it back here. I'm a little bit disappointed that there's no kind of USBs or charging sockets on the back of the centre armrest, and yeah, that's kind of everything. I'm actually surprised of how comfortable I'll be on a longer journey. Granted, I can't quite get my feet fully underneath the driver's seat, so if I ask him nicely, he might be able to raise it up a little bit for me. But other than that, I think I should be absolutely fine doing a longer journey. Just anyone taller than me would be in trouble. So yeah, it is a little bit surprising, but I think that's enough of the back seats. Let's have a little look at the boot. Opening the boot of your Fastback N, I do apologise for standing like this because the wind is quite strong and I don't want it blowing on the mic. You are presented with 450 litres of space, which is actually 55 litres more than the i30N hatchback. But it is a nice square load area. The main issue is that there is a huge load lip here, so if you are loading any large heavy items, just be very careful that you could do your back out as you are lifting them out of the boot area. But apart from that, it's actually not too bad. It's not devoid of features. We've got a 12-volt socket, and we've also got a couple of shopping hooks, and then we've got some tethering points in the corners of the boot area. And then underneath the boot floor we have also got a space saver spare wheel, so that will definitely come in handy if you get a puncture. However, the elephant in the room is actually the strengthening beam right at the foot of the boot there, and you might need to remove that if you need to load any large heavy items. Also, the main issue as well is that if you do remove it, there is actually quite a bit of a ledge, so again, loading any large heavy items could be a little bit tricky. But other than that, in terms of the boot itself, it is of a nice square load capacity, and yeah, I think it will actually be surprisingly useful even as a hot hatch. But you know what? That's enough of the practicality side of the i30 Fastback N. Let's go for a drive. So first impressions of the Hyundai i30 Fastback N. Well, even before you get going, this feels special. Just pressing that engine start button, you just hear a lovely burble coming out of the back of the car from the exhaust, and it gives a very nice exhaust note as a result, and you just know you're in something very special. And then once you get going, the first thing that hits me is just actually how the Fastback N feels like a solid bit of metal. I don't know if it's kind of easy to explain, but I feel as though I feel very safe in the car. It does feel very secure and very well built, and that kind of inspires confidence when you push on in the Fastback N. And then next up we've got the visibility. So of course this is going to be a negative compared to the hatchback. So yes, front visibility exactly the same as the hatch. We have got some quite thick A-pillars, so just be aware if you are pulling out of junctions or going round roundabouts, you might find yourself on occasion just looking around them. And then looking over your shoulder and looking behind you, it is compromised because of that sloping roofline. So rear visibility is quite poor because the actual aperture for the rear window is very narrow, and as you can see here with a comparison to the hatchback. So I actually went to a dealership in order to get a couple of snaps for you as a comparison. And then looking over your shoulder, yes, you have got a couple of small windows in the C-pillars, but they don't quite hide the fact that there is a substantial blind spot there, and you don't get blind spot monitoring on the Fastback N. So just be aware of that if you are doing any kind of long journeys and you need to change lanes. But other than that, you just know from the get-go that this is something special. And even if you're not a petrol head, you're getting this and you kind of think, yeah, there's performance underneath. There's something about this i30 Fastback N, or even just the Hatchback N. There's something special about it. And yeah, the first impressions are very, very positive indeed. So the engine in the Fastback N is the same as you get in the hatchback. It's a 2-litre 4-cylinder turbocharged petrol unit producing 271 brake horsepower and 353 Newton meters of torque. But unlike the hatchback version of the N, there's no kind of entry-level version. You just go straight for the performance version with that 271 brake horsepower and 353 Newton meters of torque, and that goes through the front wheels through a very lovely 6-speed manual gearbox. There is no automatic available, and that means that 0 to 60 is taken care of in 6.1 seconds, and you should be able to get a top speed of 155 miles an hour where you're allowed to, of course. Now, I have seen a couple of videos where they've driven the Fastback N on the Autobahn and they have easily achieved over 160. So I think Hyundai might be telling a couple of porkies there in regards to the top speed, but not in a bad way. But I really do like this engine. Actually, I think like is an understatement. I love the engine in this Fastback N. It's got something that a lot of engines haven't got, and that is character. It just wants to rev, it wants to pull, and it is just a fun engine to use, and I love the sound of it. And I'm not even in N mode, I'm just in comfort mode, and it still has bags of character with it, and I really do like it. Now, of course, this being a performance engine, there are going to be drawbacks, and that big drawback is going to come in the form of MPG. So there is a claimed MPG of 37 miles per gallon on a combined cycle, and well, driving around town, I can get around about 23, 24 to the gallon out of the car, and on a couple of longer journeys, I've just gotten over 30 miles per gallon, just touching 31 to 31 and a half. I've not been able to get anywhere near that 37, and that kind of, for me personally, shows the infancy with the N branding. I mean, it's a wonderful performance engine, and a lot of manufacturers can produce a performance engine, but when you don't have the frugality to kind of back it up, where some of its more well-known rivals, such as the Golf GTI, can achieve more, that's where it just kind of shows that, you know, Hyundai, through their R&D departments, will definitely in time get to a position where they'll have the perfect all-round engine in terms of performance and economy. But at the moment, the performance bit, they've got licked. I mean, I know 271 brake horsepower isn't exactly class leading when you've got the likes of the Civic Type R and also the Golf R out there, and even the Renault Megane RS. But you know what? In terms of usability, you can use this engine, you can enjoy it on public roads, and you don't have to break the law in order to do it. And again, that's another reason why I really do like this engine. So what's the ride and handling like in the Fastback N? Well, when you got it in normal mode, it's absolutely fine. You could easily live with this on a day-to-day basis. Yes, the suspension is firm, but it is actually really compliant, and it deals with most of the bumps and imperfections really well. As I said, it is firm, but it's not uncomfortable. If, however, you do come across a really rough bit of tarmac or a severe pothole or manhole cover, then yes, it will boom and resonate into the cabin, and every so often you could receive a little bit of a jolt as you go over it. Don't forget, you have got performance tyres and you have got 19-inch alloy wheels. Now, speaking of the performance tyres, that is another intrusion into the cabin, and that is in the form of road noise. So again, just be aware of that. If you are doing any kind of long journeys, you will get that coming into the cabin. But if you have the radio on, or if you've got a passenger next to you, then it should be absolutely fine, because you'll be able to talk over it. But in terms of just everyday usability, again, in normal mode, it's absolutely fine. And the steering as well is just a joy to behold. It's got quite a bit of weight to it, but it's a positive weight. There's no devoid of feel from the front tyres. You know exactly what the front wheels are doing, and it does inspire confidence. You can chuck this about a bit with a little bit of reckless abandon, and the car feels planted. It doesn't want to let go, and feels like a proper little hot hatch, or I should say big hot hatch. It does inspire confidence, and yeah, it's just really nice to use. The steering wheel as well is lovely to hold on to. It is heated in the Performance N, and that's because you pretty much get everything bar the kitchen sink in terms of spec. But when you come across a corner like this one here, at no point did I feel the car was going to understeer. At no point did I think, oh God, it's going to let go. And that's quite a rare thing, because nowadays you can feel that some cars will, as you go around the corner, it's kind of 50-50 about what's going to happen. Now, yes, I have driven the Fastback N in the wet. I mean, to be honest, most of the week I've had this car, it's been raining, because we've had Storm Jeffrey and Reginald and Kira all over here. And if you do push it around a roundabout or around a corner in the wet, it will want to understeer. But you can feel the ELSD and everything all working to keep the car in check. And again, it inspires confidence. This is just a brilliant car to drive, and it puts a smile on your face. As you're driving it, you just want to go into corners with a little bit more speed and a little bit more exuberance. Of course, I'm not going to, because it's not my car, and I don't want to annoy a Hyundai. But you just know, if this was your car, you can just use this every day as a commuter vehicle, and then you can just, at the press of a button, change the character of the car, go to a track, and it becomes a weapon, a brilliant weapon. And it's one of the things I love about the Fastback N. Now, a very quick thing I do want to point out with the Fastback N is, one is a little niggle, and the other is something I really do like about this car. So here is the little niggle. If you put the car into any of the drive modes and you want to keep it in that drive mode, once you stop the engine and you get out of the car, it does actually revert back to normal mode. So just be aware of that. Every time you get into the i30N, you just got to press the drive mode and get it back to where you want to be. So that's just something to be aware of. The thing, however, I really do like about the i30 Fastback N, and I think it's a brilliant little feature, and it reminds me a lot of the, I think it's the E36 BMW M3, is when you start the car up on a cold morning, the red line limiter, the rev limiter, actually goes further forward. You get orange little LED bars to let you know not to over rev the engine, and they slowly disappear as the engine warms up. And I think that's a brilliant feature on this car, and you can see a photo of it here on the screen. So I experienced that on a morning when it was -2. So by the time I got to work, the engine had warmed up and it was happy for me to do what I wanted. But just to kind of, until then, just be careful as you're driving your i30 Fastback N, because you'll want to drive it quickly. that's how much this car just makes you feel. It makes you feel like you want to drive it quickly, and it makes you feel like you want to have fun. So again, just something to be aware of when you're driving it. Talk about the two buttons on the steering wheel. The one underneath on the left that says drive mode, and then the one on the right which has no words, just a checkered flag. So on the left we've got, with the drive mode, you've got normal, which is what we're in now, and then you put it into sport, and then there's also eco. Now sport, instantly there's a slight change in the exhaust note. As you can see, I'm wobbling around a bit. I do apologise for that. So the suspension has firmed up, and there's a little bit more response, I think, from the engine. And this is brilliant for kind of driving about on the roads if you want to show off to your friends, but still keep it in the legal limits per se. So, and that's 70. And I've not even gotten out of fourth gear. And again, that's just in sport mode, and the exhaust note has got character to it. It sounds really nice, really fruity. I've driven a number of these 2-litre 4-cylinder turbocharged units, and some of them just feel devoid of character, and it's a real shame when the actual car themselves is a really good car. This kind of reminds me a little bit of the Renault Megane RS, the new Renault Megane RS, because even though that's a 1.8 turbo, it again has lots of character to it. And if I go around this corner now, even in sport mode, it just, oh god, I did not want to let go at all. And it's just absolutely brilliant. So sport mode is a great way of showing off to friends and family when they got them in the car on public roads what the Fastback N can do. It feels so composed, it feels sturdy, it feels solid, and it feels really fun. That's the key thing. So that's in sport mode. I'm going to press the button again. We now go into eco. I think the less said about eco, the better. I mean, you're probably very rarely going to go into eco mode. Apart from the fact it just tells me straight away, go into 6th gear. Okay, so that's eco. That's the three buttons, that's the 3 modes, sorry, on the left button. We now go to the right hand button, where we've got 2 modes. Well, 1 mode, 1 customization. So if I press it, we're straight into N mode. The car goes bright red on the screen. And now first thing, we got rev matching. So that's the first thing to come alive. The engine now, or the exhaust I should say, is in full performance exhaust mode, so it's in full attack mode. The steering is at its heaviest, the suspension is at its firmest. I do apologise if I'm wobbling about on screen in front of you. It's probably going to be the effect of a lava lamp kind of doing its thing in front of you. But I'm just driving around now at 30 miles an hour in N mode, and this is not a mode you want to be driving around in on a daily basis. On a lovely smooth bit of tarmac, it will be fine, but on roads like in Milton Keynes, they're not going to be that good. Now you can drop it. You get that blip of the throttle with the rev matching, and then, oh god, it just, you get the pops, and you get the bangs coming out the back. But it's not a gimmick. The man behind this car, and indeed hopefully for the future a lot of other N cars from Hyundai, is a gentleman named Beirmann, and he, oh, has worked wonders on this car. That's the next thing I'll tell you, the brakes. The brakes are absolutely brilliant. So Albert Beirmann, if you don't know who he is, I'll put a link in the description below. He is essentially the man. I'm going to take it out of N mode because this is not a nice bit of tarmac. He used to be at BMW and he was responsible for a lot of M cars, and I think we can all agree BMW M cars are some of the best performance cars ever, really. And he's now with Hyundai, and I think Kia as well. I'm not sure if he's worked on the Stinger as well, but he has worked his magic on this car and setting it up. The N, by the way, if you don't know, for the Fastback N stands for Nanyang, and also the Nürburgring, where this car was tested, conceived, developed, honed, and just made into what it is today. And you can't take your hats off enough to Hyundai. I mean, this is their first real hot hatch, and they've come up with a car that should really have Volkswagen frightened, particularly with the 7.5 Golf GTI, the Mark 7.5. Okay, at the time of recording, the Mark 8 has just been announced, and it will be soon kind of fully unveiled. Unfortunately not at Geneva for 2020, but it is just, this is just a brilliant car. If you are a petrol head, you won't care about the name Hyundai, you won't care about the brand, you'll care about the car. And this, you'll drive this and you'll drive a Golf GTI, and you know what, I think you'll go for this over the Golf. If, however, you are, and I don't like to use the term badge snob, but if you are more brand affiliated or so, you'll go for Volkswagen because that's the more established brand, that's the name that's been around for longer, and that's what you'll do. But I'm going to say it now, if it was my money and I had to put it onto a salesman's table to buy a car, it would be this. I would have this over a Golf GTI. However, would I have it over a Civic Type R? That's another story. That's another question altogether. So everyone, I hope you've enjoyed my review of the Hyundai i30 Fastback N, because I can tell you right now, I've really enjoyed this car. I think Hyundai have created a winner in terms of a hot hatchback. If you have any questions about the Fastback N and my time with it, please put them down in the comments section below. As always, please hit that like button, don't forget to subscribe, and hit the bell notifications icon to let you know when I, Dave the Auto Bear, bring out a new video. As always, I am on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, and I always advise that you follow on there for additional content, including still images and live videos. But guys, I hope you all have a wonderful day. I am loving driving this i30 Fastback N. I really do not want to give it back to Hyundai. That is how much I love it. And if I had the money, I would be at the dealership now, and I would definitely be putting a deposit on one, because it is just bloody brilliant. So guys, take care and have a good one. Bye bye.